email information. And AG Bondi directed Cash Patel to start kicking arse. Bondi handed what she had. There was nothing, Marshall. There was an embargo until after the UK Prime Minister visit. Let's see. Wonder how Keir's sniveling, groveling, warmongering Keir is doing. So Epstein's address book to release per report, but it was already public. The files released include Epstein's personal address book, New York Post reported. Documents span over 100 pages, include a list of contacts with no context per the report. As many social media users have pointed out, the book was already made public. A client list is not included in the documents to be released. Julie K. Brown, the list has been public since 2015. All one has to do is Google it. That's the Miami Herald lady who one of the ones who got the ball rolling. Let me have a look what she said in full. Those involved in the Jeffrey case for 2 decades fear that the case and Epstein survivors are being used for political purposes. This isn't a news story, it's a publicity stunt, said lawyer Spencer Kuvin, who has worked on the case since 2005, representing 9 victims, including victim 1. All right, guys. So it's pretty much a non-event. Pam Bondi got us all excited, but the pressure's going to be on her now to get some information released in the coming days. And if there's anything... Oh, here is Ryan Dawson joining us right now, folks. Let's see what he's got to say about this. Hey, brother, how's it going, man? He's just tuning in his audio, folks. And hopefully he'll be with us momentarily once he gets his audio fixed. Let me see what you guys are saying in the chat. Yeah, the continued controlled demolition of America. Well, hopefully it's getting turned around.
There it is. Okay.
Here he comes. Ryan, what do you think about this? And
you know,
all
it was on mute, but it goes from light green to yellow. And when you're red-green colorblind, that doesn't help. Why don't they make one blue and whatever? Anyway. Yeah, man, it's hit the fan with Epstein. Can I say that name? Shoot. Is this YouTube?
Let's say Jeffrey. Just say Jeffrey.
Yeah, Jeffrey. Yeah, that guy. Yeah. the dude that's on that map back there. Yeah. There's a lot of attention on this story again, and I'm excited that people didn't forget about it and they still care and they still want answers. I'm not too optimistic about what's been released. I think it's just a little black book and a bunch of flight logs, both of which we already have.
So reading the quotes, then she's claiming that she wants the rest of some information by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning from the FBI. She's demanding it. There must be a lot of pressure on her right now after this non-event.
They circumvented her, didn't they? They just went right around her and gave it to a bunch of Zio influencers. And they're holding up these folders. And I'm thinking, I guarantee that's just a little black book and a bunch of flight logs. They're not going to go into his client list. They're not going to get into his white collar crimes with Bear Stearns or any of that, because they just won't. It's not happening. They really bit off more than they could chew, promising they release these files. Because essentially they got in there, or before they got in there, they said, yeah, we'll release JFK, 9/11, Epstein. Then got into office, realized all 3 of those things go back to foreign country A, and they're, oops, now what do we do?
Yeah, exactly.
They're not going to do it. And here's the thing about JFK. They'll say, well, 99% of the files were already released. No. 99% of the files given to the 1992 review board were released. There were lots of files that never even saw the review board. And obviously that's where the dirt is.
And is that one going to be minimized as well?
100%. Trump was already president. He could have done this last time. Why didn't he release all the JFK back then? Why didn't he talk about Jeffrey back then? Why now? And why now is because basically social media made this happen. but they're just going to feed them information we already have, which to them will be brand new because none of these people read. So they're going to go and be like, look who was on the plane. Oh, look who's in his book. And then anyone that's been paying attention is just womp womp. We knew that. Nothing new. I hope there's more out of it, but I don't think there is.
Right, viewers, Ryan's links are all in the description box. I've got my maps framed now on the house walls. People have been coming over and admiring them. You can support his work by going to his store as well. He doesn't ask for donations. He'd rather give something in return. Mm-hmm. We've got slews of stuff here, including clothes for baby Ziggy. Dawson University.
Dawson University, yeah.
And if you guys have got questions, Ryan's up late right now, so get your questions in before he...
I feel bad for my brother because he was just on the History Channel about his lost colony discovery. And then with the Epstein files and then the Tate brothers finally are out. That's some good news, but it just stole every headline. But when you're saying Dawson University, I have a twin and he does the similar to me, digging all these things up. And he had a pretty big day and it got overshadowed, I guess, by all this. Let's see this question.
Ryan, what list did you just put on Rumble? I am confused about the list you just put up.
Oh, that's just the thumbnail. I just decided to use part of the list for a video I did about Epstein. For those who don't know, I have been tweeting, rumbling, substacking the Epstein client list for years, and it just doesn't matter. That's what's so frustrating. I've had it. Let's see. It's not within range from me right now. I usually have a black notebook full of names, and I walk around with it. I'm like, look, here they are. Right at the top of the list, Les Wexner and Jess Staley and Glenn Dubin, and you can go through and Leon Black, and it's here's the people, here's the list, and they don't care. They act like no one got arrested. They act like no one got sued. It's just not true. Look this up, people. I want you, anybody that has Google, write this down right now. JP Morgan, 290 million, Epstein. Look it up. They had to pay $290 million because they were facilitating hush money and payments to his prostitution ring. Look up Deutsche Bank, 75 million Deutsche Bank. Write it down. And write this one down. Leon Black, 62 million. Prince Andrew, 16 million. To act like no one got sued, no one had to pay enormous settlements, not just individuals, but banks, is wrong. They did. They got caught. They paid through the nose. People got arrested, not just Maxwell and Jeffrey. Jean-Luc Brunel, he died in a Paris prison. He was the number 3 person in that ring. He also went to jail and died in jail by himself. He did it to himself, allegedly on his own too, just like Jeffrey. Yeah, see, I almost said the word. It's YouTube. It's so stupid. YouTube's like, oh, you can't talk about anything political. That's what it is, though. But yeah, people were busted. They were caught. There are the list. I have to say, people presuppose there's just some client list, like he wrote it all down alphabetically and stuck it in a locker somewhere, and the FBI went and grabbed it and go, oh, look, he was stupid enough to write down all of his clients on this convenient piece of paper or whatever, and we found it, but we're just not going to. That's not how you get the client list. Here's how you get the client list. Many of their victims are still alive and will tell you who SA'd them. And the ones there's a lot of them. Now, the ones who are out publicly, like Maria Farmer or Virginia Roberts, they'll put their name to it and say, yeah, that's why Prince Andrew had to pay Virginia money. I mean, they're photographed together in Maxwell's house. You have a 17-year-old American girl in England with the prince, red-faced drunk, coming back from a party. He went and had a bath and then did, what he did. They will tell you, this person arred me. And that person arred me. It's written, it's in court testimony. So the victims know who did it to them. So out of the mouths of babes, there's your clients. If they knew who they were, because not all these people are super famous, Bill Gates level recognizable. Some of them are just the boring hedge fund managers, whatever, donor class people. And so it's just some guy and he's like, oh, I'm Bob or whatever. So they don't always know who did it, but many times they did, especially if somebody had any kind of notoriety, and they'll tell you who it was. His own employees will tell you who it was, including the staff around the house, bodyguards and chefs and things, and the pilots. One of the pilots was so miffed, he just leaked the flight logs. So then you got to see everybody that was flying around with Jeffrey. Now, not everybody who got on a plane with him, or he got on a plane with in some cases, is guilty. It's just, you got to have, that is a data point though, and it's worth knowing who his associates were. But not all of them knew what he was up to. But many of them definitely did, especially when when you see the log and it's him, Maxwell, so-and-so, and a bunch of girls. Then it's pretty safe to know what was going on.
You've got an interesting question coming here, and that is from the Conch. What does Bill Barr know about Nicholas Tartaglione?
You think he would know the story of when Jeffrey got choked out by his roommate, that obviously who has access to him? The one that's in his cell. So if you were going to do a contract killing and you needed to have access to a certain prisoner, who would be better than the cellmate? Would Barr know? You think he would. Now, it was funny because Jeffrey said, oh, I did it to myself. Or they said he said that. So he could be on suicide watch so that he wouldn't be alone and he would get separated from his cellmate. But they took him off that watch. They're like, you're not suicidal. But they always say, oh no, Nicholas wasn't there. He was over here at the time. But I think he was killed much earlier than they are saying. They went and discovered his body later. And there was actually this is not that reliable, but a 4chan post saying he's dead, he's been dead. And then about 45 minutes later, they discovered him.
Yeah, and Tartaglione, if there's a world where crime and government
cop killer.
I mean, he was a cop himself, wasn't he? An ex-cop.
Yeah.
Up for the death penalty, so he had a lot to lose, his life, and he's not received the death penalty. He's had allegedly had a quid pro quo. Jeffrey.
It's more important to say on behalf of whom. Like, why? Okay, it doesn't matter. Well, it does, but who killed him is not as important as who had him do it. And that's the big mystery, because everybody needed Jeffrey to disappear. But as far as of the Johns, which one has the most influence, especially over New York prison system and organized crime? That's on that list. And that's the Clintons. They had the stroke to do that.
Starduster wants to know, wasn't Pam Bondi in AG in Florida when Jeffrey was caught?
Yeah, and that's why he went to jail.
Wow.
But he went to like weekend jail. You know, he had work leave 5 or 6 days a week. And that's what's interesting too, because if he's only in jail on Sunday or sometimes Saturday and Sunday, yet he gets all these visits from former Israeli prime ministers like Ehud Barak. That's weird, because he can only come but once a week. So if you get a dozen visits, that's 12 weeks. I mean, you're basically there every week visiting Jeffrey while he's in jail. You know, please make sure, don't worry, we're going to make this go away. Don't say anything, because the easiest way out would just be to plea bargain up. Okay, here's some names. And they may make sure, no, don't do that. The second time, I think it basically got to, you're going to keep your mouth shut because we'll kill you.
Yeah. And we got a question here from Bailey. Ryan, could you give new people a breakdown of how you got involved researching Jeffrey?
I had a girl tell me about it back in 2007. I have told you if you remember, I gave you this person's name, but this person is not public. But she was telling me what was going on, and I thought, okay, and it was like a year later he ends up getting arrested. Like, wow, everything that girl was telling me, I got to recheck this. So because it seemed outrageous, because it is. If you listen to that story, it's the guy with the private island. Da, 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 it just sounds like sure, you know. But so I looked into it, and it was very hard to get any information until he got arrested. Then it blew up. And then you see the people who are visiting in prison. You see his association with Maxwell. And I already knew about Robert Maxwell. And so when that, if for those who don't know, he was an asset for Israeli intelligence. He was a whistleblower. Well, not a whistleblower. He was the one that told on a whistleblower, Mordecai Benunu, and the Israelis imprisoned him. And then Robert Maxwell, you know, he tried to put the squeeze on the people that put squeezes on people, and he got thrown off a boat naked. They killed him. But anyway, once I saw that Jeffrey was with Maxwell, then I realized, okay, this goes back. This is state sponsored. This is not some perverted rich guy that did this all by himself. And so when I looked in his associations after the Jalton School with Ace Greenberg and the Bear Stearns crew, and all the art schools from Leon Black and Global Apollo, it all came together. He had just entered into a pre-existing network for sexual blackmail set up by the Israeli state. And so that's kind of where it started. And over the years, you would get more and more, his reach got bigger and bigger. And so, yeah, I mean, I knew about the Clintons. I found the photographs of them in the West Wing in the early 90s, which I gave. What we had an episode, I put that on Shaun's show. It had to be taken down because of how YouTube is. But prior to them, when they were, the timeline they had back in 2019 is he didn't know Clinton until after this date. And I said, really? Why are they photographed together right here? And those finally came out online and vindicated what I was saying. They had a tight relation with the Clintons, both of them, not just Bill. And he brought them immediately as soon as he was sworn in. They were there. And it's not because they're some kind of super donors. Yeah, Slick Willie with Monica and the rest of it. He had him. Clinton had been compromised back when he was governor. A lot of those women that were accusing him of being a biter and the things I really can't say, but Jennifer Flowers and that whole crew, that Donald Trump put in the first row when he was debating Hillary Clinton. He had a bunch of Clinton's abuse victims sitting in the front row. He was profiled as an easy target because he's already engaged in this stuff back when he was doing them, running MENA for Iran-Contra as governor of Arkansas. And, they picked him to be president because he's compromised. But they had him way back then because he's like RFK Jr. He has no self-control over his willy. So when you behave that way, you're going to be greenlit by the Maxwell types, and they will get you, they will film it, and they will compromise you. And I believe that's why Clinton, one of the things they forced him to do was to choose James Woolsey to be the director of the CIA. And that then gave them control over the CIA. And this is why when Maria Farmer went to the FBI all the way back in, what was it, 96, 98, I think it was 96, they didn't listen. I mean, it's Clinton's FBI. I got to do anything. And they also controlled the CIA. So it took several administrations all the way until Donald Trump, really, who had a falling out with Epstein. And they were friends too, and then total enemies, that they finally could rearrest them. And they got Burnell and they got Maxwell. But it took until then, all that time, because one of the things people were like, why didn't these girls just go to the police? Why didn't these girls just go to the FBI? They did. They did go to the cops. They did go to the FBI, and nothing came of it. The cops used to call and warn Jeffrey ahead of time that they were coming to his property in Palm Beach. And that's verified by his own staff. That we'd be told to clean up, get the boobies off the wall and all that stuff. And the cops would come, so nothing would come of it. And that's because he was bribing them. He was bribing them through an LLC he set up called Gratitude America that would donate to the police departments hundreds of thousands of dollars, and which would just gave him carte blanche to do what he wanted. He paid the cops off.
You got a question from Anne. Why would Pam Bondi come out on TV and say she was going to release it? Is Trump on it, Ryan?
Well, it depends what you mean by it. I think when they say the file, like they said 9/11 file, JFK file, RFK file, MLK file, Epstein file, and UFO file, they just threw that in there. There's no other than what I have, as far as I know, there is no one just went through all the documents and compiled a list. There was no list sitting in a locker somewhere that they could just go grab and go, aha, here it is. You have to go through all the different data points and put that together yourself. He's not going to give it to you, obviously. But what they have, when you're talking about a file on somebody, when the federal government says that, 90% of it is not useful information. It's just any information they have. So, yeah, they know his associates. They know Maxwell's associates. But it's more or less a little black book, which doesn't give you all the names, because from the internet age onward, once they had cell phones, sometime in the early 2000s, they don't need a black book. That's all just going to be on phone records, which we don't have. But as far as the early stuff that they were doing in the 90s, yeah, you have all his associates in those books, but you can't do anything with it, because just because somebody's name is in a book because they knew somebody doesn't mean they're guilty of kitty fiddling. Some of them are, some of them aren't. Now, the person that released that put little circles around certain names. But is he saying this person is engaged in that, or is he just saying, hey, here's a really interesting high-profile person, you should look into them? Unfortunately, he's dead, so you can't ask. But it is a data point, and it's something that you can go, okay, and say, okay, there's a circle next to this name in the book. Let's see if we can corroborate this with a different data point. Are there any victims that say this same person essayed them? Oh, there is. Okay, let's look deeper into this. That's how you formulate a real list of clients, is by combining data points. And there's nothing stronger than the victims themselves saying, person A did this to me.
Right.
And there's ways to verify that too. Let me give you an example. So like Glenn and Ava Dubin. Ava Dubin used to be Jeffrey's girlfriend. Glenn Dubin's a billionaire. When Ava was pregnant, and her and Glenn went to a particular hotel in Florida, and Virginia Giuffre was there in order to give them massages. I believe she gave a massage to her first because she's pregnant. And like, oh, she's pregnant and she needs a massage. Okay. Now I go to the husband in the living room. And there's like a bearskin rug and stuff. She's describing the hotel, the interior, the furniture, like things. It's not like you just saw a famous person and said, oh, yeah, him. She was able to tell you details that a teenager would not have. And not about a super famous person. This wasn't like one of the Bills, Bill Gates or Bill Clinton or something. This is just some guy, Glenn Dubin. He's not a famous person at all. But he was there. His wife was there. Was his wife pregnant at that time? Yes, she was. Like, you can add up, her story adds up to other details. So she's just telling the truth. She knows, she definitely lived with them. She was in all of his properties. So they can tell you, yeah, the bathroom had a marble wall, it had a green massage table. Like, you would not be able to know that unless you had been there at least. Now they get to argue, oh no, these girls were there just doing regular massages. Like, no, they were not. And then you have the paper trail of money too, because a lot of the hush payments were done by banks, and which is stupid. You should go deliver cash. That's what the mob would do. But I guess they got arrogant and lazy, and so they were just wiring money. And so now that's why they've had to pay over $400 million in restitution to victims. But I often wonder, how much did they do that they may have paid in cash that we don't have a paper trail to? Like, what if this is just the extra that we have hold of, which is very plausible.
Question from Conk. How did the guards at the jail fall asleep with the cameras turned off the night of Jeffrey being unalived? Was it Bill Barr behind it?
Total coincidence, right? Well, it was DEI hires. They're often asleep on the job. Prisons are not like you see in movies. The idea of incompetence, you're like, there's no way. I'm like, yes, there is. Camera's not working is a little worse. It's like, oh, they didn't work that day. I bet they didn't work any day. Those prisons are slop. And people, because no one has sympathy for prisoners. But and I really don't have sympathy for those prisoners in that jail, but we need massive prison reform. Cameras ought to be working. There's nothing to prevent guards or prisoners from abusing each other. There's another reason you have cameras, is not just in case someone escapes or something.